My name is Laura Long, and I'm the office manager here at Signarama. I actually started with Signarama back in 2000. I started off in graphic design. I did graphic design for 13 years, and I kind of got burnt out a little bit, just being behind a screen. So I took a little break, and then one day Dawn called me up and said she had an office manager position open, and I jumped at the challenge. So many differences. When I first started off, I was just sitting at a desk designing, which is a fantastic thing, but you kind of get caught up in your own little design world. And now learning the front end of the office type of things, the managerial things, HR, sales tax, invoicing, billing. It's just kind of nice to have that overall view of everything. So I scheduled an interview with them. It's kind of a funny story that day. Back, before smartphones and everything like that, we had the schedule interviewed. I didn't have a car. I was downtown Denver, so everything was walking, and wasn't really familiar with the bus schedules, but I remember I planned out my bus route on how I was going to get there, dressed up in a nice suit. I had my big old college art portfolio. It was big and bulky and heavy, and I get on the bus and do one transfer, and then I realized I transferred on the wrong bus and was going the completely different direction of my interview. So I didn't even have a phone at that time, so I had to find a payphone and call them and let them know that I'd gotten on the wrong bus and I was not going to make it in time, but I was still going to try to make it. And I get off at what I thought was my stop, but it was a stop too early. So here's me in my suit in the middle of summer with this big old portfolio, having to walk 2 miles to get to this interview that I'm already extremely late for. But by the time I get there, I'm exhausted and hot, and I just think there's no way that I'm getting this job. But I'm going to show up. I'm going to make it no matter what. So we went through the interview, and it was okay. And at the end of the interview, they kind of said, well, we kind of figured if you, after all of that, made it here, you already have the job. And then I think the most memorable one-on-one interview I had was with a young lady for the front office. And I had asked her the question, what was most appealing to her about the position? What made her wanted to apply for the position? And she had said to me, well, the job I have now is crazy hours. And she's like, I'm just really looking forward to having a job that's like 8:30 to 5. And that way at the end of the day, I have time to meet my friends at the bar.
Oh,
So,
okay.
Not saying that that's not understandable, but at the same time, I think my most memorable job, we did a wrap for Sensi, a vehicle wrap.
Okay.
And it was a partial wrap, and I worked so hard on the design, and I was so happy with it. I was so excited to see it on the vehicle. And it was kind of a more complex design, so it had to be digitally printed and then laminated, and then it had like a special cut, like a shape cut around the graphics.
Yes.
Back in the day, you could only do so long of a run, and you were always worried about your plotter not being on and not cutting exactly where it needed to. So I remember we told the installer that he was going to have to trim it by hand before he installed it on the vehicle. About halfway through the day, I remember the owner went back to check on the installer and see how everything was going. And he had about half of the vehicle on. And she kind of looked at it and said, you know what? She's like, it's a little crooked. I'm not happy with it. I think we need to redo this and make sure it's just dead on right. She's like, so just take it off and we'll get it reprinted. The installer said, well, I don't think we should take this off. And Dawn said, well, the longer you leave it on, the harder it's to get off. So let's go ahead and take it off. And we'll talk to the customer and have him come back in later. And he's like, well, I can't take it off. Well, he had installed the graphics on the vehicle.
Oh my goodness.
And then trimmed them while they were on the vehiil without the appropriate tools. So he had actually cut into the paint of this vehicle. So it wasn't a great start. They ended up replacing the vehicle, and they were nice enough to give us a second chance. So we were able to get the graphics on, do it correctly, and it actually turned out wonderful. Actually, well, we had an install on a ski lift.
Ah, yes. There we
Yeah,
go.
so it was kind of up in the air, and we went up there, and we were not quite prepared for the height of that. So we put the ladder up, and once you got the ladder up, you would basically have to lean back to install the vinyl graphics, and it was just quite a big risk. The customer had told us, well, we've got a front loader that we could possibly use. And so we said, well, okay, we'll give it a shot. And a couple minutes later, the guy in a front loader just trucking down the mountain. We got in the bucket and they got us up there and we were able to install the graphics. So that was a fun day. I think my most memorable one would be we had a project for the Colorado School of Mines. And basically what they were doing was they were using the different mountain peaks to designate different areas. And so I came up with some designs that we were going to present to them. They had different mountaintops, different peaks. Pikes Peak was one of the ones I set up for an example. And spell check's a funny thing because you can still have a correct word, but the wrong word. So instead of Pikes, P-E-A-K, I had Pikes, P-E-E-K.
Oh.
And that proof went out to the School of Mines. A little embarrassing, but everybody got a good laugh. We still got the job. And at the end of the day, the sign went up, Pikes, P-E-A-K. So everything was correct. I've multiple times pulled over to the side of the road and walked up to a sign to see how it was made. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I'm like, how did they do that? And so I'll just go look.